Netanyahu is determined to continue to fight at full force, despite the turn of, well, not really the turn, the consistent voice of public opinion around the world and in Israel itself, despite the mounting death toll, the growing international calls to pull back from his ground force, and what seems to be a fairly self-defeating ground force attack. On Sunday, 14 soldiers were killed. 14 more soldiers have been killed. This brings the total to 153, according to the BBC. And that is set against the 20,000 Palestinians apparently killed in Gaza since the start of the hostilities, so many of them women and children, among them the 13-year-old Gamer. And 80% of the Palestinian population has been displaced. Huge amounts of the territory have been reduced to rubble, and international charities talk about a catastrophe, a health crisis, and the difficulties of building back. And the United Nations Security Council on Friday passed a resolution calling to urgently expand the humanitarian aid flow into Gaza. And at the same time, Netanyahu keeps the gates resolutely closed. The only way for Netanyahu to change the language of the critics is to open up the gates to take in refugees from Gaza, to give them treatment in superior Israeli hospitals, and to recognize the damage that's being done to ordinary people. Whether this has been caused by Hamas or by Israel, it really doesn't matter. What matters is a demonstration of basic humanity and the manifestation of basic civilized behavior, and that is not seen by either side. And that is to Netanyahu's discredit. Joe Biden has said that he did not ask for a ceasefire from Netanyahu on Saturday, and I think he's wrong to have put it in those terms. I think a ceasefire is not what is required. What is required is a clear vision of peace, and that hasn't been articulated by Netanyahu in the same way as it hasn't been articulated by Putin, or indeed by Zelenskyy. In a battle, in a war, whether this is in Israel or in Ukraine, both sides have to think of a realistic position after the fighting has stopped. Now, Zelenskyy is clear that he must resist the invasion. I understand and I sympathize entirely with that, and I think as long as Zelenskyy demands to resist the invader, I think he should be supported. But I think he also has to be realistic. And Putin is beginning to show signs of looking for a way out. Now, it may be that he wants to do that before his election. It may be he wants to do it in the early days after his election, because, of course, the entire invasion was about his electability. Whether he's dead or alive, who cares? But he has been apparently having talks with Zelenskyy. Now, Zelenskyy is a very interesting politician. He served time in the Russian Duma, in the Russian parliament. He was also at one point the deputy prime minister in the Soviet Union, as well as being deputy prime minister of the modern Russia. I was going to say modern democratic Russia, but the idea of talking about democracy in Russia is absurd. Democracy has never really existed in Russia except for a short period in the 1990s when it probably is better described as chaos. and a nod towards oligarchy and free for all. But Zelenskyy runs a minor opposition party, and it's extraordinary that Putin should be talking to him. But Putin has had discussions about the possibility of peace. Zelenskyy is a clear opposer of the war, and he has not been locked up, partly because of his importance in Russian politics for so many years. And he has apparently conducted a secret negotiation with Putin about Ukraine. This negotiation, I think, took place or began in October. So it's been going on for a while. And I think Putin would do well to listen to Zelenskyy, would do well to listen to Erdogan, and would do well to work out on what terms he would accept peace. Because dictating peace to Ukraine is not a way forward. That is not peace. That will be an imposed position like the Minsk agreements, which will simply fester resentment. I think there is an option. I think there is a route out of the Ukraine crisis, and in a way that I don't think there's a route out of the Israel-Gaza crisis. The Israel-Gaza crisis, I think the longer Israel continues its military offensive, the harder it will be to establish peace afterwards. In contrast, I think that the longer Zelenskyy can hold out, the easier it is going to be to negotiate what will be a lasting peace, because Zelenskyy will have the upper hand. Putin wants a way out. In the case of Israel, neither Hamas nor Netanyahu want to stop, and that's the problem. In the case of Ukraine and Russia, Putin wants to stop. And that may be, of course, because, as I've said on many an occasion, Putin is dead, or as good as, and it may be simply because the war has dragged on for too long and people are tired. But Putin has, he believes, an endless supply of soldiers, and Mr. Zelenskyy has started to call up voluntarily men who are outside the country to come back to Ukraine and fight for their country. And he is worried about whether he has the weapons to continue, or not so much whether he has the weapons to continue to defend Ukraine, but whether he has the weapons that will make an impact and will drive the Russian troops back. And that probably is the bigger issue. Does Zelenskyy have the forces available to make an impact on Russia and to force Putin to the negotiating table? I think he only has to do a very small amount, because I think Putin is ready, and he would do well. I'm sure he is doing well to listen to the mood of both countries and of the international community. But I'm afraid Putin and Hamas are likely to defy that mood.